Good morning, almost early afternoon. We'll be starting momentarily. I'm going to get us all set to go live on our Facebook group. I seem to sometimes forget to press that button. Hello to folks who can see us in the Facebook group. We'll be getting started in just about 2 minutes from now. I'm very happy to have folks here today. Fan this out. Good morning, good morning. We're very excited to have folks here today joining us. We'll be starting shortly. All right, we're going to get started in just a minute or so. Welcome to folks who are joining us on the Facebook group as well as live in our webinar. We're very excited to have you here today. It's like we've got a few folks who are on. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat if you'd like. We'll go over just a few things and then we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, it is noon Central Time here. So we are going to get started, recognizing that some folks might be on lunch hours or just taking a moment to listen to us. And we are so excited to have folks here today. Anna, just a heads up on the Facebook, it just sees me, but if they're watching the webinar, I think they can see both of us. So that is the fun of that. For folks who do not know me, my name is Kim Kushner. I currently serve as our Assistant Director of New Student and Family Programs in our Office of Student Involvement, which is within our Division of Student Affairs. And the best way to get a hold of our team is through families@umkc.edu. A little bit about me. I've got a 4-year-old son. And I love working with parents and families. I'm actually, unfortunately, though, going to be leaving this role at the end of the week, but there'll be somebody amazing coming in to take my place. So stay tuned. But Parent and Family Programs is a really essential and incredible resource for our parents, families, and supporters of UMKC students. I know that we advertise this out to our current family members, as well as we put it in some of our Office of Admissions prospective family member materials. So we welcome all folks here and are excited to talk today about FAFSA scholarships and, believe it or not, upcoming deadlines, because it's almost February. Oh my goodness gracious. So a little bit about this live webinar. We will be asking you if you have Q&A to utilize the Q&A part. We can also put things in the chat, but it's usually a little easier for folks in the live webinar to use the Q&A. We'll answer questions accordingly. Anna will do most of the talking because she is the expert in residence. Whereas I will just help moderate and stop if there are questions. In addition, we will be utilizing the Facebook group. So if folks are following along on the Facebook group, they are welcome to use the chat and ask any questions. I'll also be putting some websites and resources and things in that Facebook group chat as well. So Anna, I turn it over to you, my friend. I'm so excited to have you here today. Go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I am Anna Zimmerman. I serve as the Financial Wellness Manager at UMKC's Financial Wellness Center. So I had the opportunity to join UMKC about 2 years ago to start the Financial Wellness Center. And a little bit more about me, you can see my husband holding our new-ish puppy now. We live very close to campus, and so we often get to walk around campus on the evenings and then also on the weekends. You can find more about our office located on our website, or you can call our office if you have additional questions after the webinar today. If you have not heard of the UMKC Financial Wellness Center, you're not alone. As I mentioned, we are in our second year, and we empower students to confidently navigate their personal finances and achieve their goals. So many of the functions of financial aid, we take those maybe a step further and often serve to help our students determine how does financial aid, how do scholarships fit into my larger financial picture? And we do this in 3 main ways. So we provide one-on-one financial coaching to all UMKC students. So whether you're a prospective student or you're 6 months out from graduation, students can set up an appointment with our office. We can go over specific questions related to the FAFSA or scholarships. We can also talk about budgeting, credit cards, investing, and really any other financial topics as well. We do offer events and workshops throughout the semester, so I will highlight a couple of those in case your students are looking for additional information. And then we also have additional digital resources on our Instagram and on our website, which is listed here on the screen. So today we're going to be talking about the FAFSA and scholarships. I'll also briefly touch on some forms of financial aid, including grants and work study and loans. And then I'll give you a couple of deadlines and reminders for what's coming up next for your students. So starting with the FAFSA, if you have not had an opportunity to complete the FAFSA before, the FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It's used by the federal government as well as many state governments to determine eligibility for financial aid. And financial aid is not just student loans, but it also includes grants and many forms of scholarships as well. The FAFSA does have to be completed each and every year that your student plans to attend school. So unfortunately, if your students are continuing at UMKC, you will still have to be pulled into that FAFSA process. Your student can find the FAFSA at studentaid.gov. The FAFSA opens each year on October 1st, and the priority deadline for Missouri and for UMKC is February 1st. So as Kim alluded to, that deadline is coming up quickly. It's crazy that we're already to February in 2023 almost, but this is a great deadline to keep in mind because if your student completes the FAFSA prior to that deadline, they may be eligible for additional forms of aid versus if they were to miss that deadline. And any student that is interested in receiving federal student aid should complete the FAFSA each year. If you're not familiar with how the FAFSA actually works, it compiles a lot of various pieces of information to determine a student's eligibility for aid. So some of the information that you will be asked to provide includes your student's tax information if they filed taxes in 2021. It will also ask for parent tax information. This is particular for students that are considered to be dependent students. It will ask for the number of college students that are in your family, and as well as asking questions related to your income and savings. So a lot of financial data primarily, and that information is then used to develop the student aid report. So when your student completes the FAFSA, they are immediately sent a student aid report or SAR. This student aid report is going to include a couple pieces of important information. So the first piece of information is it will let your student know if they have been selected for a process called verification. Verification is kind of similar to an audit. Students are randomly assigned a verification notice, and that requires the student to then provide proof of the information they provided on the FAFSA. If your student has been selected for the process of verification, you will need to provide all of that documentation before your student receives their financial aid package. So it's very important to take a note of whether or not your student has been selected for verification. Generally, the documents that are going to be required are those tax documents that are related to the information shared on the FAFSA. It will also share the expected family contribution, or EFC, as well as an aid estimate for any Pell Grant or student loan eligibility. And if you're not familiar with the phrase expected family contribution, or EFC, that is okay. This number is an estimate calculated by the federal government's algorithm. It is not the actual amount that you or your family will have to be paying for college, but it is what the federal government perceives or believes that your family should be responsible for when paying for a college education. This EFC is the same regardless of the school that your student chooses to attend, and so you're not going to see any variation in there. And with that EFC, then the FAFSA looks at the cost of attendance, which varies by each school. That's an estimate of what it will cost a student to attend, subtracts out that expected family contribution, and that determines financial need, which can then be filled with grants, loans, work study, and other forms of aid. Some common mistakes that I see when I work with students who are trying to complete the FAFSA include, number one, not completing the FAFSA. So many students say, my family makes a little bit too much money. I don't think I'll be eligible for anything. We're seeing many students who make that mistake are actually missing out on free money to help them attend school. Another common mistake is mixing up the parent and student information. It's very important that the parent's tax information is put for the parents and the student for the student. And then finally is incorrectly entering data. So the FAFSA has an IRS data retrieval tool that I always recommend families use if they can. This tool directly pulls in your tax data from the IRS, so it's guaranteed to be correct, and you don't have to spend a lot of time typing in individual numbers if you use that IRS data retrieval tool. If you do have any questions on the FAFSA, you are not alone. This process can be a little overwhelming, especially if it's for your first time. And there are lots of different ways to get assistance. So you are welcome to reach out on chat to studentaid.gov. That's the federal website. You can work with our financial aid office here at UMKC. High school, college counselors will be able to help with this, as well as the Education Opportunity Center, which is located at Metropolitan Community College. That's a federally funded site that helps individuals complete the FAFSA. If your student is a continuing student here at UMKC, we actually have some FAFSA drop-in hours coming up this Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. So your student can pop in, get help completing the FAFSA, and they can win a free t-shirt if they complete the FAFSA at our event. So it's a great opportunity if you need to give your student a little bit of a nudge to get that FAFSA in by the deadline. Scholarships are one of our big questions that we get at UMKC, and there are kind of three types of scholarships that I wanted to talk about today. So if you have a prospective UMKC student, whether that's a transfer student or an incoming first-time freshman, we have automatic scholarships that are available. These do not require any separate application. They do require that students meet certain criteria. Those criteria are generally related to your GPA, your ACT score, or other information like your major. Many of these automatic scholarships can be renewed year after year, although there are some that may be one-time awards. And these are for incoming students only. So it's very important if your student is a prospective student that they meet these deadlines so that they are able to take advantage of these automatic scholarships, because they will not be an option in future years for your continuing students. We just recently passed the deadline for our freshman students. That was January 15th. But if you have a transfer student or a prospective transfer student, their deadline for the fall semester is going to be May 1st. So again, getting that application in on time is very helpful. You don't have to have committed to UMKC by that date, but we will need your application on file to be considered for those. If you miss that deadline, or if you have a continuing student that's looking for additional scholarship opportunities, we also have our competitive scholarships. This requires a UMKC competitive scholarship application, and I love this application because it essentially works like a funnel. So students complete one application and it will automatically sort them into many of our over 1,300 different scholarships at UMKC. So as far as a time saver, your student is not going to have to fill out 20 different applications, all asking for the same information. They complete one and are submitted for hundreds of different scholarships at UMKC. Each of those scholarships may have its own criteria, and so the application will automatically sort your student based on their eligibility, based off of GPA, their active involvement, and these scholarships may or may not be renewable. The deadline for this one is March 1st of every year. So your student is eligible, even if they are a prospective student, to complete this application. And then as they continue on at UMKC, whether as an undergraduate, graduate, or PhD student, they are eligible to complete this scholarship application each year. Finally, if you and your student have already checked the box on those first two categories, you are always encouraged to look for outside scholarships as well. Outside providers can send scholarship checks to UMKC to be applied towards their balance. Each of these is going to have its own criteria, and they may or may not be renewable from year to year. If you're looking for a place to start to find outside scholarships, I've included that website there, financialaid.umkc.edu. And this has a list of different private scholarships that are available to students that are in the area. I think it's a great place to start, especially with the local scholarship section, because those are going to be scholarships that are specifically to our students that are coming from the Missouri and Kansas area. So again, when you're thinking about competition, if you're able to reduce the competition pool based off of geographic area, that increases the chances that your student will be selected. If you have questions on how to support your student as they're working on scholarships, some of my recommendations are to send helpful reminders. March 1st is coming up fast, and our scholarship application does require 2 letters of recommendation. So giving your student a little bit of a nudge and saying, hey, have you had an opportunity to look at this application? Do you need any assistance or do you need any recommendations? Can really go a long way to making sure that they hit that deadline. You're always welcome to volunteer to help read your students' essays or help them brainstorm. Some aspects of the scholarship application require your student to write down any honors and awards that they've received or any involvement that they've had in extracurricular activities. If you've got a student, especially a freshman, sophomore, or prospective student, oftentimes we as parents maybe are the best ones to help brainstorm. You probably remember all of the awards and honors that your student has received, and they may have forgotten. So helping them out with that. And then also checking to see if your employer or your nonprofit organizations or church offer their own scholarships that your student may be eligible for. As I mentioned, within our office, we do a lot to support students with scholarships. We have 2 upcoming workshops where we will actually walk students step by step through the competitive scholarship application. One of those is on Zoom on January 31st, and one of those is in person on February 15th. I really love these workshops because I currently serve as a scholarship reviewer, so I know what we're looking for. And then I also invite some of my student staff members to share their experiences, and they have all received scholarships as a result of this application. So it's a good way to get examples and get a lot of really hands-on recommendations. Your student can also take advantage of the writing studio, who can help to review any scholarship essays. So if that's an area that your students have a lot of anxiety around, the writing studio is there to help them with that and can help provide some additional recommendations as well. As far as the additional forms of aid, so beyond scholarships, grants are one of the big forms of gift aid. They do not need to be repaid, and they are based off of financial need as determined by the FAFSA. So this is where that February 1st priority deadline is really, really important. So just within the last year, $3.75 billion of Pell Grants went unclaimed because students either missed deadlines to file the FAFSA or chose not to complete the FAFSA because they thought they would not be eligible for. This is why we encourage every student to complete the FAFSA to see what they could receive. On the federal side of things, Pell Grants are probably the ones that you may be most familiar with, but there is also the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. This is also a grant that is first come, first serve, which means that the earlier you get your FAFSA application in, the more likely you are to be selected to receive this grant. On the Missouri side, if you are a student coming from the Missouri side, Access Missouri is a grant through the state of Missouri, as well as the Bright Flight grant. So there's a lot of free money out there, but it all requires the FAFSA to be completed by February 1st. Another form of aid that many students use to help them reduce their loans or reduce their out-of-pocket expenses are work study. So while your student is completing the FAFSA, it will ask them if they would like to be considered for a work study position. I always encourage students, check yes. Checking the box yes means that you could be eligible for work study, but it does not require that you work a work study job. So it gives you that option, but your student is still welcome to choose to pursue employment off campus or outside of campus if they don't find a position that works best for their schedule. Work study positions are also first come, first serve, which means that you will want to complete your FAFSA by that priority deadline. In order to receive work study funding, a student must apply for, be offered, and work a work study eligible job. I really like having work study students in my office. They are fantastic about bringing their own perspective, and we tend to be one of the more flexible jobs. So we understand that a student's first job is to be a student, and so we tend to be pretty flexible if students need to take time off to study for a test, or they have other extracurricular activities that they need to be involved in. Students can earn up to their allocated award amount. They are paid hourly, and the paychecks actually go directly to our students. So if your student is planning to use some of their work study paychecks to help pay towards tuition and fees, they will be responsible for receiving that paycheck and then turning around and paying it to UMKC. It's not going to go directly to UMKC. It does go directly to our students, just like a paycheck from any other job. If your student is in a position where we've gotten grants, we've gotten scholarships, we've gotten a work study position, but we still maybe have a little bit of a gap, loans can be an excellent opportunity to help fill some of that need, but not all loans are created equal. So on the screen, I've highlighted the loans that tend to be offered to our undergraduate students and our graduate students through the federal government. You're going to see at the top direct subsidized and direct unsubsidized. When I talk to students, I always call the subsidized one super subsidized. The reason I say that is because this loan is at 0% interest while your student is in school. So if your student takes out $1,000 today, 4 years from now when they graduate, they will still owe $1,000. It won't have gotten any larger, and it doesn't require a credit check. Direct unsubsidized loan is going to accrue interest or get larger as your student continues in school. If your student is an undergraduate, that'll be at 4.99% this year. If your student is a graduate student, it'll be at 6.54%. So there is a little bit of a gap there between undergrad and graduate. Loans are also made available to parents, which are in you, the parent's name. They have a little bit higher interest rate and they do require a credit check. And our graduate students are also offered that same type of loan requiring a credit check. For all of these loans, repayment starts 6 months after a student graduates, drops below half time, or leaves school. So students have some time to make plans for those student loan repayments. For that Parent Plus loan, they do go into repayment automatically unless you specifically opt into that delayed payment where you wouldn't start paying until your student has graduated. And if you have any questions about loans, I understand that they can be very specific. You are welcome to set up an appointment with me or in my office, and we can always walk through your student's specific financial aid package, kind of talk about some of the different implications for the various forms of aid. And so kind of tying this in towards the end, some important deadlines that I want you to remember are number one, our FAFSA priority deadline is February 1st. I would certainly encourage you over the next couple of days or the next week or so to work with your student to ensure that you can get the FAFSA filed. Again, filing the FAFSA by that priority deadline may make your student eligible for additional forms of free money like grants and scholarships. And then March 1st is going to be the important date to know for our competitive scholarship deadline. So certainly encourage your student to start working on that application if they haven't, and to seek out some of our activities if they're looking for places to start or they're looking for some idea creation. A couple other things that you can do to help support your student as they're trying to navigate their finances is number one, to open that conversation. I know that talking about finances can be uncomfortable. Sometimes we feel like maybe our students aren't listening to us, but I think having those open conversations up front can really help your student understand both the cost of college, the sacrifices that you or your family may be making to make them happen, and also what their responsibilities are financially or what their responsibilities are for the family to continue to receive that aid. You can always be sending reminders to students, helping get that nudge to encourage them to complete the FAFSA and the scholarships. You can help them to create a plan for scholarship application, so helping them identify outside scholarships and then helping them create a timeline of when they need to complete items by. and just encouraging your student, letting them know there are lots of scholarships out there. They are not all GPA dependent, and there are lots of opportunities to find additional forms of aid. So just setting that time aside to work with your student can go a really long way in helping them to start off on the right financial foot. And with that, those are kind of the big topics that we wanted to hit during this lunch hour. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can throw things in the chat. It looks like maybe we've got a couple things going on. We've got lots of links in the chat to help you find the various items that we've talked about. But if you have any questions, Kim and I will hang out for a little bit. But otherwise, it was wonderful to meet you all. And please feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions about your student situation.
Anna, thank you so much. We'll leave this open. I'm looking at the Facebook group as well as here, our Q&A. If anybody does have any questions, feel free again to use the Q&A, or you can use the chat. We'll give it a moment. No question is silly. We want to make sure that, we call it orientation, the Invest in You series, learning about a lot of this and learning about bills, and really like college, UMKC, it is an investment for your student and for your family. And we recognize that and honor that and want to help you. So I'm going to stay quiet for a moment and see if anybody has any questions. Anna, you know what I love? Can you use your motivating getting paid $700 an hour thing? Because I'm not gonna lie, Anna's like little back of my mind helped me. I'm a doctoral student, get $2,600 because she says this. So I'm going to make you say it too.
Yes. So I mentioned encouraging your student. So I always like to remind students, if you spend 2 hours working on a $1,500 scholarship, you just made $750 an hour. And I don't know about you, but that's a whole heck of a lot more money than I'm going to make in my full-time position. And that's more than any of our students are going to make at their part-time positions. So applying for scholarships is a job that pays, and it pays off big. And so we really encourage students, set that time aside. It is absolutely worth it to go ahead and get those applications in for scholarships.
Yeah, I think I use my example of a scholarship. Now I can go to a conference, and I spent a Saturday morning doing it, and it was fantastic. I love that. I think that's always a great motivator for folks, and just being able to break it down into realistic numbers, so it doesn't seem like this big scary thing.
Yes.
I don't see any other questions. Anna, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What is your favorite? Oh, we do have one question. We have Jennifer, would you like us to allow you to talk? I can do that.
Hi, thank you. I was curious about, is there a link for the competitive scholarship application? Did I miss that link?
Let me see if we can find that.
Yeah, that is, and Kim, that's umkc.academicworks.com. If we can throw that one in the chat.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
that.
That's all right, thank you.
No,
yep,
thank
and
you.
The way that the UMKC competitive scholarship works is they will complete the general application. As I said, that links them automatically with all of our scholarships at UMKC. Once they complete that application, they will also receive some nudges for additional scholarships that they may be eligible for that may require an additional letter of recommendation, an additional essay, or additional information. But just getting through that general competitive application submits them for over 1,300 different scholarships at UMKC. So it's certainly worth the effort. Another tip that I always give students is, like I said, you're going to be completing this application each year you're at UMKC. So encouraging your student to maybe copy and paste their answers into a Google document and Word document so that they have that as a reference in future years. Oftentimes, if they're explaining their past experience or their extracurricular activities, those may not change a whole lot from year to year. So taking advantage of the time that they've created it that first year and then being able to use it or build on it in future years can definitely help save time as they move forward too.
And actually, Anna, you just reminded me, I even just received a request for a recommendation. So if you want to talk a little bit about the application process and maybe, again, the nudging of reminding folks what's a part of that, because I've got a queue of some folks who I know well, various levels of well, at UMKC, who are ahead of the game, getting ready, getting all their scholarship stuff in, but they need a reference. So I have to write them a letter of recommendation. And there's probably some really great ways to ask for recommendations, and perhaps some maybe less than great ways to ask for those.
Absolutely. So our application has a couple of different components. So some of the components that I mentioned is we will ask about your students' jobs or extracurricular activities. We'll ask if they have received any honors and awards. There are going to be a couple short essays. And when I say short, they really are pretty short, from 250 to 500 words, asking them to share a little bit about their financial responsibilities, asking them to share their professional and academic goals, and then asking them to share a little bit about how receiving a scholarship could change their financial situation or help them to achieve their goals. But the part that Kim was mentioning, which is oftentimes the part that a lot of our students are actually probably the most anxious about, is we do require 2 letters of recommendation. A couple recommendations that I have for students if they're trying to identify who to ask. I always try to encourage students to have at least one UMKC letter of recommendation if they're a current student. The reason why I ask for that is I think it can be really helpful in allowing us as reviewers to see not only is the student really successful, but they can be successful within our community here. Some common people that your student may consider asking include professors, academic advisors for any clubs or organizations, could even be an advisor that's involved as, a teaching assistant or a research assistant. So any of those individuals are oftentimes going to be able to help out with the letters of recommendation. As far as a couple best practices, I'm very similar to you, Kim. I think I've got a couple that I need to write on my to-do list. I always encourage students to ensure that they're giving enough time to their recommenders. So I recommend that your student gives their letter of recommendation at least 2 weeks to complete that recommendation. If they can get that request in earlier, that's often helpful. So my level of stress and the number of recommendations that I need to write tends to rise as we get closer to that deadline. So if a student asks me a little bit earlier, I'll probably be able to dedicate a little bit more time to their recommendation. Some other things that I encourage students to think about is as they reach out to an individual to ask if they would be comfortable writing a letter of recommendation, for your student to offer to provide a resume, or for your student to have a little bit of a conversation about what they might like to be shared in that letter. So for example, I had a student in my office yesterday. We had a little bit of a conversation. She mentioned that she's really proud of some of the leadership work that she's done on campus. That's not necessarily something that I would have been really familiar with, just having met this student several times, but by her providing that resume and telling me a little bit more about that information, I'm able to highlight that and allow that to really stand out as I'm working on that letter. The one other thing that I'll say is we reviewers can also get very busy, and it is okay to send a reminder. So if your student has reached out to ask someone to write a letter of recommendation and we're getting to that week before, it is absolutely okay and appropriate to send a quick follow-up email saying, hey, thank you again so much for being willing to write me a letter of recommendation. It really means a lot. I just wanted to send a quick reminder that those letters are due by March 1st. Is there any additional information that I can help provide as you start to work on that letter? And just sending that reminder can go a long way. Like I said, no one purposely ever forgets these things, but that March 1st deadline is a very strict deadline, not just for the student piece, but also for the letter of recommendation. So sending a little nudge is absolutely okay and appropriate if your student is in that situation.
Thank you for going over that. I think that's always kind of sometimes with those types of deadlines and things, people are like, I can just wait till the day before, which sometimes they can, not recommended. But then there are those external pieces that folks need to consider, as well as recognizing that sometimes our outside scholarships also may require some pieces. So planning ahead and that consistent communication. And then also, again, recognizing that your students investing, you're investing in them. And then again, we are investing in you and making sure that you all can be successful in this entire experience. We want your students and we want your family to be here and be, financially able to be here and financially getting all the resources possible. So With that, are there any other questions? I know I put us on a small tangent there, so thank you. I think I asked that question like every single time. So, because it conveniently was like literally just got an email while I was running this. I was like, oh yeah, I gotta write those. Well, Anna and I will stay on. If anybody does have any particular questions, we'll stop recording momentarily. But folks, again, UMKC Parent and Family Programs, our Financial Wellness Center and Anna's team, we are all here to help. Families at umkc.edu is the Parent and Family Programs email. And then Anna, can you say yours one more time?
Yep, our email is financialwellness@umkc.edu, or our website is also umkc.edu/financial-wellness.
Awesome. With that, I'm going to stop our recording.